Okay, whoever wants to start can start.
I'm Marche Cooksey.
I'm Destiny Wheeler.
I'm Ashiba Smith.
Hi, I'm Israel Olu.
Hi, I'm Melody Adu.
And the two movies we picked this time was Get Out and 13th. Get Out was directed by Jordan Peele and 13th was directed by Ava DuVernay. One is a documentary and the other was would you say like a horror movie or like?
Yeah, horror.
Yeah, it was a horror movie. Someone can give like the overview.
A brief overview of 13th. It discusses the topics of the 13th Amendment and how that has shaped some racial aspects in today's culture in America. And it really focuses on the issue of mass incarceration. And Get Out is a horror movie that also has a lot of racial undertones. We see the main character, Chris, how he is navigating through a extremely white circumstance when he goes home or when he goes to visit his girlfriend's parents.
Okay, so we're gonna start with editing and camera work.
So the editing for Get Out, the editor, his name is Gregory Plotkin. He's done a lot of horror movies. The most well-known ones are like Happy Death Day, which came out pretty recent. And he's edited a lot of Paranormal Activity movies. So I think he's had a pretty good rep in the horror department. A lot of the edits really have to do with it being like a psychological horror movie, I believe. Like we see at the beginning, where Lakeith's character, it's a lot of like ominous looking editing where it's kind of cut off and you really focus on him until, the card comes up. I think that he did a really good job with the editing. It looks really great. I think that it does a good job at really speaking to the Black experience in white spaces that Chris was stuck in. And then 13th, its editor was Spencer Avernick, I think is how you say his name. I'm not sure. He's done a lot of editing of Ava DuVernay's movies. He did Selma, A Wrinkle in Time, and a couple other of her movies. So I think you can see that they have a really close relationship and they probably have really good communication when it comes to editing. I really enjoyed 13th editing, like even though it was a rough movie to watch or a rough documentary to watch. I really enjoyed the editing. All the cuts that had a lot of the footage of a lot of historical happenings. I really enjoyed the lyrics that they edited on the screen. I know a lot of times they really emphasize criminal in a lot of places. I thought, that was very intentional. But overall, I think the editing and the camera work for both movies really highlight both racial aspects and it really feeds into the storyline.
I honestly enjoyed the like editing and Get Out because I feel like, especially like the scenes where he was like falling, he was trying to like climb up. I thought that was like really good because it seemed like it feels like you're actually in the room in a sense, and you want to get up there too. And I enjoyed like how I'm not a big fan of cut scenes, but I like the cut scenes where it was like he would end up falling asleep and then, or it's like a big moment would happen and then he just like he wakes up,
right?
I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I agree. I also I liked how like close the camera was to his face, and like I liked how we were able to like really see all his emotions, because like I feel like it allowed the audience to feel like what the director and the screenwriter like wanted us to feel. So I thought that was really well done.
I agree. Our next point is going to be music.
Yeah, so the music in Get Out was The music choice was very good. It differs a lot from 13th in that 13th used a lot of well-known songs throughout time in order to like represent the time period that was going to be spoken about at that particular point. Whereas Get Out, they use the songs themselves that they use were very well known, like Redbone, for example, during the I think they used that during the second opening scene, uh, especially where Chris and the girlfriend are kind of like getting together and like they're kissing each other, but at the same time, the lyrics in Redbone, uh, it contains the lyrics "Stay woke, niggas creeping," and it's kind of foreshadowing the movie because Chris is all caught up in his love of his girl, but the lyrics are saying "Stay woke." And throughout the movie of Get Out, they're using a lot of instrumentals and um, dissonant tones that go with, uncertainty, whether Chris is facing the servants that live at the house or the white people that he's really unsure about. And a lot of minor tones and major tones are switching back and forth to kind of give a sense of uh, comfortability and then switching right to a sense of like an uncertain feel. And yeah.
I think a song from Get Out that actually freaked me out a little bit, like it gave very much a horror movie, was the like song that was playing in the car that was like "Run, Rabbit, Run." Like it
Yeah.
mostly scared me. And I thought that was like a good little touch because it was like they kind of were hunting Black people.
Right. No, I definitely agree. The music choices were really good. And they use a lot of violins, like in certain scenes where he's supposed to be like scared. And I thought that was a really good choice for them because like, like when you feel like you're trying to catch your breath, I thought that was a really, really great choice in that movie.
I agree. Next one, I think we said script.
Okay, so for the script, to start off with 13, I feel like I really enjoyed the script. I think the documentary style, like for me, the movie left a big impact on me. And I feel like all the um, people who were presenting, whether they were like a professional or a politician, I feel like they were very well spoken. I mean, I'm sure they like cut out anything that didn't make the cut because I just feel like it was very impactful and it left like their words left an impression. Like I am still thinking about that movie after the many numerous times I've watched it. One thing I would say about both these movies is the scripts kind of were very triggering. Like there was no like that these movies hold weight just by like the discussion surrounding them, but they were very like 13 specifically is very triggering. They played like the gunshots on police calls. Like I wasn't really expecting that, so it kind of hits you. So I feel like I don't know if that counts as a script, but all the sounds that they included and chose to include, the 911 calls, those left a very big impact on me. Um, I kind of like how they were speaking to the camera because it was giving like a direct dialogue when they were like they're speaking directly to the viewer. So it was like we were having a conversation. And I feel like the tone was very, very informative for 13th. Like it wasn't a condescending one, but more an informative one. Um, I also really think including the different tidbits and speeches from people like Barack Obama, Martin Luther King, even a KKK leader, it really showed like the progression through time and showed what was going on when. Because we see, images of Hillary Clinton speaking from one side, of history, and now years later, we, as we know her, we see her speaking from an entirely different point of view. Um, Kind of diverging, I think the script and Get Out was very different because they used a lot of sarcasm, like to prove the point that they were trying to make. I feel like it was less educational in a sense because you kind of had to put the pieces together because it was more of like a mystery what was all happening. And I feel like it gave it a more reflective tone. So you had to sit back and try to see what happened to get the whole message. And I think that it was interesting how like they use like proper English, quote unquote, and like try to move away from slang to show like, this whitewashed community versus like a traditional um, Black community.
I agree, especially with what you were saying about 13th. I thought it was honestly like a nice little setting because when I think about documentaries, sometimes it feels like it's just like, oh, someone's just talking for the whole movie. But it felt like I liked how it was kind of like a back and forth from multiple like people's perspectives. And then I also enjoyed how it would show like basically someone would say something in the past and they backtrack it. I think like the best example that you gave was like the Clintons, especially Hillary. She would like that clip that showed her talking about Black people in a negative light. But then later on, she's like, oh, well, that actually was wrong of me. And I like really enjoyed how it showed that as well. And then also like the transitioning between the conversations in the movie when they would play like certain songs to transform into like a different era. I also enjoyed that as well. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I agree with both of you about the script. I think that Get Out really established Jordan Peele as like a horror writer and director. Um, I mean, it stood out because even what 3, 4 years later, we're having conversations about what it actually meant and what he meant to portray. So I think that he did a really, really good job with the script. And like you said, like there is a lot of sarcasm. And I know the first few times when I watched it, like you would catch a bunch of different things, and then you would have to, again, wait and see and think about, okay, well, does this mean what I think it means? Was he alluding to this? He has a lot of like little hints about stuff that I think that he's experienced, or, just the overall Black community experiences, in our culture. And then, yeah, with 13th, I think that it's very well written, at least in the documentary style, because I mean, this is the second time that I've watched it and it still makes a huge impact.
I think Jordan Peele, honestly, he enjoys like a good little plot twist too. But I also feel like within the script, like I was watching it, and it was like certain things that they would say, like you would think that it's not like racist or whatever,
Right,
but it was like actually very racist. Like some of the things that like when you open it and he's like, oh, does your parents know that I'm Black? And she's like,
right.
I would have voted for Obama a third time. So it's like you see like he has like these subtle racist remarks in the text as
Mm-hmm.
well. Next we're going to get into actors and casting. I feel like the difference in both of the movies is that even though one is a documentary with like other people, like actual people, and the other one is like a dramatized story, I feel like they still do like intertwine because I feel like they said something that they said in 13th was that like Black men tend to be like the aggressor or like overly represented as criminals in films, media, all that. And you see like Jordan Peele wanted to kind of do the opposite, but you also see that narrative did play in the movie, like when like you see in the beginning with like Chris and the police officer, there was automatically like that remark like, oh, he's the bad guy in this situation. And then you see like towards the end like the defeat on his face when he saw like the cop lights. I feel like Daniel played a good role as playing Chris because like you see like he was able to portray his emotions well, and you see like this inner conflict in Chris throughout the movie, like of, oh, I I love this person, but the things that are going around me aren't right. But you see, he doesn't want to act out on it because he doesn't want to portray that like overly used stereotype. And then another character, Rose, I feel like she played the role of like the innocent victim white woman that like constantly is out in the media as well. And they touched on that in 13th about how like white women have been able to use their tears as like a weapon, and she like portrayed that very well, especially towards the end when you see like she changes like her demeanor when he's looking for the keys, and then you see like, oh, it's all been a fraud, and you see her face throughout the movie. Like if you look at like the subtle expressions that she does when her family is like talking to him, she tries to play the role of like, oh, you shouldn't say this, like this is borderline racist, but then you see on her face it's like she agrees, or she's trying to put up this role. even towards the end when like what goes down is going down and they see the cop lights, she thinks she'll be able to get out of the way, like get him out of there. Meanwhile, she was the one that did it. And I also enjoy like how she would say like certain things like, oh, that was crazy, right? That was racist, right? And he's just like, I don't want to get involved. I also enjoyed the Georgina, Andre, or Logan, and then Walter, and the people that played them, Lakeith and Betty, Gabriel, and Marcus, and how they were able to show like the duality of the characters as well. Like you would see like there was this person that was trying to fight to get out while also like this other person fighting for them to stay in. I just honestly enjoyed how both movies, in my opinion, intertwined. In 13th, you didn't really have like characters or something like casting, but it was like they were meticulous with the people that they picked out. They chose activists who have lived through these periods. They chose like people who were incriminated based off of the standards that the US has. And I enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed how it showed like different presidents and like the things that they have done to play a role in, I guess, silencing Black people.
I agree. I actually went and looked at like the casting list for 13, and it lists like every single person. It has Barack Obama listed, has Tamira Rice listed. Like she definitely gave everyone, if even if their image is presented, she gave them their credit. I think that that's very respectful, especially since it's a documentary about these certain things. Um, and I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I do.
Okay, our next topic is settings and costumes. I guess I can say for 13th, it was just like, it was kind of like a casual but not casual conversation. So it was like they were wearing like just regular outfits to talk. And you see like throughout history how like, I guess fashion in a sense for these Black people and white people, how it has like, I guess changed. But in Get Out, you don't really see a difference either. You see like regular clothes, except for the people that are stuck in these sunken places. You also see like where these people have came from, I guess, the people that are in their bodies. Because you see like the original character who is Andre, you see him in the beginning with like a leather jacket, jeans, like clothes you would wear in this era. And then you see later on when he's Logan, he's wearing a top hat and
Yeah, fedora, like
like
tweed stuff,
yeah,
right?
he's a actual like old person, I guess, like an old frumpy person. So I enjoyed that, like you see the difference in that.
I think one thing I kind of want to highlight about the costumes is kind of the colors. There's not a whole bunch of color going on in the movie, like outfit wise, because when all the white people come up to pretty much buy Chris, they all have on black and white. So I think that that's probably very significant to the movie and the editing. But the characters who do actually wear color, Rose wears red, like she wears red and white, and then Chris wears blue, and sometimes a white shirt under it. So I think that that's pretty significant, especially that she wears red and white. So I feel like the white is probably tying into like she is a part of that life. Like she's trying to cover it up and play up the innocence of, oh no, I don't know what's going on. That's very weird, like that they would act that way, just trying to play that up. But the white that she wears really shows that yes, I am with them. And then Chris's blue, which is like a contrast from the red. I'm sure that's intentional. Um, it kind of, obviously makes him stand out because he's the pretty much the only person wearing color. And for a good amount of the movie, he's the only colored person like in the frames. So I think that that's a very great costuming on their part.
Something about a setting that I just thought about, it's like the movie is like how he said in Get Out, it's like basically the middle of nowhere. So it's like
Right.
it would have been a really hard battle for him to get out of there without an issue. Something that I enjoyed about 13th and like their setting is that like the documentary was based on like America and everything, like what's going on here. And then but like certain things they did touch on, like it's all over and it shows that racism plays a part in like just everywhere in a sense.
Right.
I want to touch on, oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, I'll touch on the setting a little bit. So Get Out was supposed to be set in like, this rural upstate New York city. Um, and then when I did some research, I found out like the film was actually filmed in Alabama, just like to show like the nature, and show like that woody kind of mysterious place. But I found like this little interview that the director did, and I thought it was very interesting. He said that it was important for him to not have a typical Southern setting as the actual, basis of the film, because he didn't want it to seem like, all racism is only occurring in these red states, like these Southern states. So he said he wanted to, have the project be based, in New York to show like that racism does exist, and it's blanketed in all these different places, especially because New York is a very liberal state and like not somewhere you would expect like this craziness to go on.
Yeah. Our next point, we're gonna tie the psychological impact of the film and like the overall question of how do documentaries help something about racism? Sorry. How do documentaries make us understand more about racism?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with 13th. First of all, I feel like it was fitting for me to do the psychological impact because like it did impact me psychologically. I just finished watching it and I couldn't even finish watching it because like it was a lot for me. So the images of lynchings and like all the violence and the stories of people being affected by the system, I feel like that all just like it was like in your face. It was like something that you could never forget. Like it will always like you'll always remember it. Like it's unforgettable. And it makes you feel angry and empathetic as well. Because me personally, like watching like the whole documentary, it just made me so angry. I I was actually shaking and crying. Like I couldn't, like I'm still kind of messed up by it. Like I believe I was watching the scene where um I think Donald Trump was at a rally and one of the Black Lives Matter protesters like started like saying something and then he was like, get them out of here. Um, back then when they like protested or something like that, like I think he said like they would beat them up so bad that they would never want to protest again. And then they like it was like a voiceover over like people in the 60s protesting and getting beat up. And that was the part that like really broke me. Like I started crying and I couldn't finish it. Like it was like 30 minutes left and I was like, I can't finish it. So I feel like 13th does a really good job of making the viewer angry and making them want to do something about like the unjust system, the unjust criminal system. So yeah, and then for Get Out, I guess in the beginning, there was a lot of like microaggressions, and then like the auction scene, it makes the viewer angry, like as I said before. So it's like all those things like kind of like build up the anger in the viewer. And then the ending where like he finally was able to like defeat the family and like got out alive, it made the viewer like happy, relieved, you know? And I feel like as Black people, we don't see a lot of Black people winning. Like we always see Black people like go to jail, you know, get unjustly treated. And I feel like that ending, like it just made you feel good. And I was doing some research and I found out that there was an alternate ending where like originally he was supposed to get arrested and his friend was supposed to go see him in jail. And I guess like I actually saw the scene and he was like so defeated. I felt like the actors themselves were even defeated. So you can see it in their faces. And I think his friend was trying to confront him, like, I mean, not confront him, comfort him and say like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. But he was like, no, like it's not, and that's okay. And according to the director, he said that it was like on set, like there was a lot of people feeling sad, like it was like a heavy feeling on set. So then he decided to change the ending last minute. And I thought that that was a really good call on his part, because if he left that part in the movie, I'm sure like everybody would be feeling like very defeated. Like I don't think it would make the movie how do I say? I don't think it would.
It would have been as popular.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. I don't think it would have been as popular. Yeah. So, yeah. And about the question, how do documentaries? What was the question again? Sorry.
How do documentaries make us understand more about racism?
Yeah. So yeah. So back to 13th. I feel like 13th, like I said before, with all those images and stuff like that, and just also using like activists and people from that time period, I feel like it really did a great job at capturing racism and its effects on people. And I feel like after watching that, like if you don't know what racism is, I feel like after watching that, you get a good grasp of what racism really is and how it really affects people. So yeah.
Honestly, I feel like the 13th documentary, it honestly opened my eyes to, well, I already knew, but I feel like it made me understand more of how racism honestly is interconnected in our society. Like the amount of businesses that play a part in racism and like racist acts that get passed all the time. I honestly enjoy, like, it was honestly teaching me about different bills and how they're made, like the Alex little thing, and how it's basically like a sham, but politicians still use it to this day. And then we have like different corporations that play a part and feed into it. I honestly enjoyed seeing that. I feel like it just made me understand more and more. Honestly, like how you said, it makes a person feel defeated because it feels like honestly, we work very hard to get further and like to do as much as we can, but it still feels like there's always going to be someone that knocks us down just because of like who we are, and it's honestly sad.
Yeah, I agree. I know at the end of 15th, I don't know if you got to it, Melody, because he said you couldn't finish it, but I can't remember who exactly said it, but he was saying about how, we slavery ended and then we had 100 years of Jim Crow. And then even now we have a newer version of Jim Crow. So like it kind of ties in what you were saying, Destiny, about how no matter how far ahead we try to get, there's always somebody to knock us back. And the sad thing is, until these systems are eradicated, because it's hard to say, oh, let's do reform and call it a day, when the people that want to do reform make money off of it. So, until the systems that really uplift and support racism are completely eradicated, like there's nothing else, not there's nothing else that we can't do, because we always can try, but it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel unless these things are completely gone. And also about like the alternate ending of Get Out, I also read some stuff about it from the editor's point of view. And he was saying, like, when he is pretty much choking Rose at the end, and that's when the police are supposed to pull up in the alternate ending. And like it was kind of a like damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. Like no matter what, if he killed her or if he was caught in that position, he was gonna get in trouble. Like he was gonna get blamed for it because again, a white woman's tears, he's the only black person and he's the only person alive in that situation. Like he was he was caught. That was it. There was nothing for him to get away from. And that alternate ending, I think, speaks better to 14th. It really it would tie in better, but obviously the ending where he is not arrested is the better ending. And it I don't know, not that I don't want to say it's not a happy ending because obviously he's traumatized like the rest of us. Like so I don't want to say, oh, it's a happy ending. He gets away because then, just like a lot of these Black men that are in jail, now you have to spend your whole life trying to figure out what to do. So I think that those really tie into each other. Like you have Chris who was stuck in this house, pretty much about to get killed and be stuck in a sunken place. And then you have all these men that are stuck in jail, a lot of them for petty crimes and, just being poor at the end of the day. And if they do get out, they also have to figure out what to do for the rest of their lives, with the mark on their back.
I agree with everything that you guys said. And for me, like this had a big psychological impact on me. Like I was like specifically 13th, like when the first time I watched this, I was unaware of like all of this stuff that was happening in our country. Like this is really ingrained into our world, and that it honestly like it made me terrified because it's like there's so many things that go on behind the scenes that we're unaware of. Because Alex, like that blew my mind. Like we hear about the school to prison pipeline and like all these new things that are being exposed, but it for me it proved like this is a lot deeper than we haven't like how much progress have we really made, because institutional and systemic racism like is inhibited by our country. Like it's built into the foundation, and to this day like it's holding our country together. Like um for me, the final words in the movie 13th, I believe a man was discussing how people have this impression that we're like above the past now. Like they believe, oh, I would never stand for the injustices that have prevailed previously within our society. And I wouldn't like if that happened today, I wouldn't just be quiet. I wouldn't sit back. But it's like we're doing that. Like we protest and we're speaking up here and there, but as a whole, like our nation turns a blind eye to this. And like even with it being exposed, I'm sure that there hasn't been much legislation that has changed since this has been exposed. So it's like we've turned a blind eye to it historically, but unfortunately, we also do presently.
I agree.
For me, especially for 13th, what I think really taught us about racism is the fact that language does go a very long way to extend the legacy of racism. In 13th, there was a Southern government official that was speaking about how before they would say the N-word to speak about Black people as a whole. And in 1968, once it became kind of frowned upon to say it, they started coming up with a lot of key words to kind of speak about Black people, but kind of still have the same effects to speak down on them and to lower them. One being not what he said, but one being in history, the term super predator. Just terms like that, in terms that are still used and created today to lower Black people and to kind of put them in a different category as others is one of the most implicit forms of discrimination and racism that we still see thus far. And speaking on implicitness, that's another thing that both of these films did very well. Just really exhibiting how implicit racism really plays such a huge role so huge that it's very uncontrollable today, especially in the auction scene and Get Out, where, as you all were saying before, there were just a lot of comments that really portrayed the racist ideas that these bidders were thinking about Chris. But in their minds, they might not think what they said specifically was racist. Like the one woman that said to Chris's girlfriend, "Is it true?" Speaking about pretty much being a sexual innuendo. And also Newt Gingrich, he made a lot, like I think like 3 cameos in 13. And the crazy thing about him is that his cameo itself exhibited the legacy of implicit racism in our nation, because shortly after the film, he went on to endorse Trump loudly. So even though he was in the film to support what was going on and to support the notorious legacy of racism and the clause of the 13th Amendment, he still went on to support Trump. And we all know how terrible Trump has been to the Black community and other communities of color. So yeah, both these films did a really good job at exhibiting how damaging implicit racism is to our country.
I think that was a good point. So do we have anything, like any final comments about either one of the movies, anything?
Yeah, I just want to say with 13th, like I said before, like it definitely opened my eyes. Like all of us said, it opened my eyes to a lot of things that happen, like in the government, like all the policies that are being made. I already knew about them, and I was really trying to like put off watching 13th, because like I can't handle stuff like that. So like after watching it, like I definitely learned a lot, but at the same time, I'm gonna need some time to recover because that was a lot.
I agree. I tend not to try to watch like, I guess like grief of Black people a lot when it comes to like movies, shows, anything. So like I honestly, people will like tell me to watch this documentary and they'd be like, oh, I just watched it, oh, I just watched it. But it's like I physically cannot watch like certain things like that. So honestly, watching this was like hard for me. And then you just see like everything that they were saying, it's like you still see it in today's time. And then just knowing like how most of it still plays a role in like how we work today. It's like even the small things that you don't realize play a part in racism that do. It's like honestly stuff in the face. So
No, I definitely agree with both of y'all, because I did watch 13th freshman year for a class, and it's still just as hard to watch it today as it was back then, because I think as Black people, we lived through it, especially since a lot of these things that they discussed in 13th aren't 1,000 years ago. They're really within the past 60 years. So we have like grandparents and parents and siblings and a lot of people close to us that we know lived through those things. And even some of the certain situations now that happen when what we may have been like 10, 11, 12, those were hard to watch again, because I remember you remember where you were when you heard those certain killings. So it's hard to relive that and think about, yeah, at 13 I was thinking of, is somebody gonna do the same to me? And even now, almost at 21, I had to think the same thing. So it's definitely a hard documentary to watch. I don't want to watch it again. I hope I don't have to watch it again for another class. I hope that's the last time I have to watch it. Same with Get Out. Like, although it's a great horror movie, I'd like to not have to watch it again. It is still really triggering, because I think a lot of Black people have an experience of being in a white only space and not being sold, but being treated that same way, as if you're almost like a prized possession. I think that that's very triggering as well. But overall, they're very informative, I guess.
Yeah, heavy on the triggering. Cause like, especially in 13th, it's just like it honestly it reopens your eyes because like I feel like personally I live a certain way. So it's like I don't go out too late after dark. I don't drive too late when it's dark outside because I get scared of like what may happen. Or like I don't do certain things because I don't want to get like I guess reprimanded in a sense.
Right.
It's kind of sad that I have to live this
Tiptoe.
way and
Hmm.
hold myself back in order to protect myself. And it's even sadder when you know like people, even young kids to this like day, they understand that and they do as well. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I agree. And like I agree on the triggering as well because I like as I was watching it, I was literally crying and shaking and like right before like when I once I stopped, like I ended up like going through a panic attack.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was very, very triggering and I hope to never watch it again or finish it. Like I don't want to do that.
Right.
I feel like it's so sad, like hearing us say we would never want to watch this again when, like, it's not fictional, like that's real life. So the fact that that's what we're going through in
Right.
reaction to a film is crazy. Like, that is so deeply saddening because it's like, imagine the work that has to be done because we're watching it and like people are living these circumstances,
Right.
we're living it, but just watching it and reflecting on what's really going on is this like traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, it's definitely triggering. This is my second time watching it. Do want to stay far away from it. However, I do think this is a film that everybody needs to watch, especially those who are unaware about all of the implications of racism and discrimination in our country. Um, Not to single out, a specific race, but I do think, every white person should watch this because I feel like our country would be a lot better off if they did.
I agree. Okay, so those were our comments about the two films, 13th and Get Out.